Hey everybody, it's Romania Black. We are on Death Note episode 7. Oh, I'm pretty excited about this because I want to know if Shoko's gonna die. So I don't know. After doing the discussion and going back to the episode last week, I was like, I don't know. I think that either it's one of two things. Either Shoko has no clue that Light is Kira and that he's gonna plan to kill her, and either she's just clueless and she just spilled the beans to the wrong person and the gods are indeed smiling upon Light, or she gave a fake name, which is why I think Ryuk laughed in that moment when she first said her name and what it meant. Either she's lying and she gave him a fake name and she's going to see if he writes it in the death note or not and tries to kill her. And then when it doesn't work, it's going to make him panic and then be like, oh crap, I don't know her name. So that is the one thing. I think that we've been talking in the comments because I'm recording this a little bit ahead of time. Episode 6 is going to come out in a few days on Patreon. Episode 5 is going to come out in a few days on YouTube. And so we've been talking in the comments about Light turning down the deal for the Shinigami eyes. I think that it's going to be the latter. My theory is I think that he's going to try to kill her with the death note. It's going to fail because she gave him a fake name. And then he's going to be like, crap, she knows the thing I don't want the FBI or the police to find out about. If she tells them and tells my father, that's going to hurt me. If they go to L, that's going to hurt me even more. So I think that she is going to be the catalyst that gets Light to take the Shinigami eyes. I think he's going to be like, I need to know her name and kill her before she can do this. I think that's going to spur him to take the eyes because otherwise he's going to get found out. I could be wrong. This series, I think something's going to happen and then it goes in a completely different direction and we're only 7 episodes in. I want to say that. I've got 3 comments I want to go to before we start this. But I want to say first and foremost, we're only 7 episodes in like a 36 or 37 episode series. We've got a long way to go. And so much has happened in these 6 episodes. I feel like this series is going to have just a plethora of things happen between now and the ending. And I'm going to be like, when I go to episode 36 or 37, whichever is the ending, I'm going to look back at episode 1 and be like, what a journey we've been on. So that's just so fascinating to me. But I do have a couple of comments before we start. Mac Rain had this really cool comment about how basically Light can manipulate people for extended periods of time. We don't know exactly how long per se, but we know that he can basically, using the death note, he can set up deaths weeks ahead of time, days ahead of time, months possibly, maybe even years. Like he can set up someone to die years from now, and along the way can manipulate them to do certain things that are within the realm of possibility, but it's still controlling their free will. It's still, regardless of what they end up doing, it is controlling them to an extent. Like the guy that hijacked the bus in episode 4 was being controlled by Light to an extent. So that's terrifying. He could really torture people and manipulate them in ways that are pretty scary. So I'm glad that was brought up, right? And so the question is, though, how in advance can it go? Like, can it be years down the road? Like, what are the limits? We kind of saw the limits in episode 5 being explored, but what are I feel like there's more limits in place than just what we're explored in that episode, but that's all we know for now. Alexander Q, we were talking about Ryuk being chaotic neutral, and that how Ryuk probably didn't care who got the death note in the end. That Ryuk probably just threw it down there saying, like, I hope a human gets it and we'll just see what chaos happens. And it just so happened to went to Light of all people. And that's why Ryuk was so happy. He's like, oh, Light, you're the perfect person to get this. You're going to keep me entertained for a long time. Hopefully. We'll see how that goes. And then some dude pointed out with the FBI deaths, it was kind of odd that L, or Ryuzaki, for the most part, kept his distance when the FBI deaths were first being talked about, like was away from the camera, away from the computer, was just kind of like mulling about. And the moment that Kira was pointed out, he was like right there, like, wait, what? So like Kira has just reeled L in. L is like all in on this mystery with Kira and wanting to solve it. And that's kind of like shows like a little bit of an emotional manipulation too, whether Kira realizes it or not. And Kira kind of knows, Light knows that L is kind of being enticed and strung along by this whole thing with Kira. That's why he's been sitting in the notes about Ryuk and everything to try to just get, a rise out of him, but also to get him like riled up. So interesting, right? So those are my comments. I don't know what else is going to happen. I don't know if Shoko's going to die, if that's even her name, what we're going to find out about her. The episode ended with like seeming like he was in control of the situation and everything was going to work out in his favor. So either they are, and Light is going to have indeed fortune smile upon him, or things are about to get a lot muckier. I'm hoping it gets muckier, but we'll see. So we're going to start episode 7 of Death Note, and we're going to start that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. I felt like the blood drain from my face the last 3 minutes of this episode. When I say we go through a lot in one episode, we go through a lot. What was this episode? What we went through the whole thing. I got both my wishes. both theories came true. He killed her in the end, and she still managed to pull the wool over his eyes for the most part. But damn it, Light. God, he's lucky. Ryuga's not joking. And the way that not only is he lucky, but the way that he's lucky that Aizawa didn't see him. That was just the Overcast. The title of the episode being called Overcast. I was like, well, usually Overcast is like when it's going to rain, but it's cloudy with like a chance of rain, but it's snow in this case because it's January 1st. It's New Year's Day. New Year's 2007. What a year. And it's luck that Aizawa did not, he put the umbrella up. It's luck that Aizawa did not see him. Well, I had to bring Whiteboard Kun out because I was like, we need to go through. There's so much implication, so much with this episode. So much happened. Oh my God. Like, L might be Batman. L might be Batman and Watari's Alfred, and God, so much luck. He is so lucky that Aizawa, it may be Aizawa is lucky that, God, it may be L was lucky that Light did not see Aizawa and suspect him. We'll talk about that when we get to it, but it is lucky that Aizawa did not stop and be like, oh, hey, Light, what's up? And then because if Aizawa had stopped him and said, what are you doing? And then she'd been like, oh, he's on the task force to get L. And Aizawa would have been like, no, he's not. And she wouldn't have shown him the ID. But it's too late. It was too late. And she could have, if that was the case, he could have questioned, but oh God, we've established so much in this episode. Oh, I'm like numb. I'm like sick to my stomach. Light. Oh, because he just learned something huge in killing her. And he just stopped this critical piece of information from getting to L. But you know what? In hindsight, that's one of the reasons I wanted to bring Whiteboard Kun out, is that I think Light, in his desperation and in his panic to get rid of her, and all he could focus on was getting rid of her, I think he missed a valuable opportunity to use her to get to L. But that wasn't his goal. He needed to get rid of her. But I think he could have, I wanted to bring Whiteboard Kun out because I think Light is smart, and I think he could have found a way to manipulate the situation to get her to help him find L. And now things are going to get more complicated. Right now things are going to get really complicated. But I'm stunned. I walked into this episode thinking, I thought that either he was going to kill her or she was going to pull the wool over him and be like, nope, not me. And both happened. Both. I got both. God. Ryuk, you need to stop laughing and giving yourself away. Right? You need to stop laughing. And that whole thing at the end where Ryuk realized that she was done. I think the moment the screen turned red and he turned into Luffy from One Piece from the recent chapters, as soon as he turned into that, I feel like the moment Ryuk became like a caricature, like an outline there, laughing his head off, I think that's the moment Ryuk saw her lifespan dwindle to nothing. The moment she said, I'll help you, I'm sure he saw her lifespan go to zilch and was like, ha! You just screwed yourself, you're dead. Oh my God. This episode, it's my favorite, but I'm stunned by it. And I'm stunned, and we're only, oh my God, We're not even a fourth of the way through the series. We're not even a fourth of the way through the series. That's the insane part, right? No, next episode will be a fourth of the way through, right? Right? Okay. No, next episode. No, we're like 9 or oh my God. I'm just need to get a hold of myself. So let's walk through this episode. I need to get a grip because, God, there's a lot to, it's such a thing because it was like so thrilling. I was like, yes, I was right. Shoko's not a real name. And then as the episode went on, it's like the show gives you, the audience, this satisfaction of like, you figured it out, you did it. And then it's like, Light's like, okay, well, you figured it out, but I'm still going to kill her. And you're like, wait, no, please don't. And the implications at the end are terrifying. When we get to the ending, that part is the most chilling thing about this whole thing. So chilling. So awful. Now I'm wondering if this girl in the OP that's going to him, if he's going to use her and make her die, but use her to get closer to Elle. I don't know how she's going to factor into all of this. But, oh my God. I am amazed at this point. But yeah, so Elle is Batman. Well, we'll talk about that. Elle is basically Batman. Okay. So, okay. Just going to put this out there that Elle is Batman. Elle is Batman and Watari is Alfred. Okay. And we're going to kind of go with that Overcast. God, this episode was so good. And I like okay, so first and foremost, the most interesting part about this episode is the fact that Shoko, or Naomi, we find out her name's Naomi, that she has worked with Elle in the past and she thought Light was very similar to Elle. And the opening of this episode starts out with 2 skyscrapers that are side by side parallel to each other with 2 identical cranes working on them at the same time, which to me symbolizes Light and Elle next to one another. They are both very, very similar characters in their own regard. They seem different, but they are very similar. And so I'm curious to see as we go through the series how that's going to change and develop over time. But oh my God, this episode, I'm just floored. And then we had the color contrast of, and you can also tie it to, you have 2 pillars that are next to one another, and then you have Naomi and Light next to one another, and she's in black and he's in white. She knows the truth. Yeah, God, this episode. And so yeah, the whole thing is if she gives information, they'll figure out that Light equals Kira. So we're going to talk about that too. So Light's biggest concern at this point, is that Naomi, we know her name is Naomi now, Naomi is going to go to the police and explain that Kira can kill in means other than a heart attack. Because yeah, that has been brought up in the comments that right now the police have not realized this fact. Everyone that they've encountered has died of a heart attack. They don't realize that Kira can kill based on other circumstances. And so he thinks that they're going to be able to tie back. Then they're going to start looking at who the FBI investigated and tie back to Light and that he is Kira. But here's my thing, and I don't think, and my dog is, of course, sitting right behind me, so I can't back my chair up, so it's going to be a little odd. But here's the complications, all right? The complications we're going to put over here with all of this. So complication number 1 is that Naomi, but he made it to where nobody would find the body. Shit. Nobody's going to find the body. There was the idea of Naomi's death tied to Ray. Okay, tied to Ray. All right. And that if they find out that she committed suicide, that the suicide would be suspect and would lead to that very thing there. Lead to Light's connection. So the risk is that if she is killed, if she dies, that Elle is going to find a way to connect it back to Light anyway if he figures it out. But I want to see exactly what he put on the death note to see if that, because there's a caveat with that, right? And so this whole time, I figured she suspected him from the start. Like, the whole time, she suspects he's acting weird. And he acts really weird in this episode. Like, Light following her. Girl, if this guy kept... Because she says repeatedly, over and over again, she's like, are you done? Are you going to go home? If it were me, if I was in her shoes, I'd be, like, super suspicious of him and be like, I need to go. Bye. I wouldn't have told him that I was still going to go to the police department. I would have went home and been like, went from there and went back another day. They clearly weren't there. I would have gone back at a different time. I don't know. I would have gotten myself out of there. He was acting so suspicious. But again, we, the audience, think he's suspicious because we know he's trying to do something. In her case, she may not have noticed it. Because he's like, and the fact that he's the first person she's told, it's like, And yeah, Ryuk's like, you're lucky, but how are you going to get rid of her? Wouldn't it be bad if you did it here? And this is the thing. Light is so condescending to Ryuk. Again, he's like, I've already figured that out without you telling me. It's like, and he does figure out that she was using an alias. He does figure that out on his own. But Ryuk, I'm like, Ryuk, you laughed so much. And maybe he just is a death god. He can't help it. He doesn't know the social cue that gives him away. But I was like, Ryuk, you gave yourself away. Yeah. But yeah, Light's a little condescending to Ryuk there, being like, I didn't have to have you tell me. I know. He just thinks he's smarter than a death god. And he acts so the way that it's drawn is so condescending and pretentious when he's like, oh, so you're so out in the open, like you're gonna, but he frames it as, can you tell me the date and time of the bus jacking, like to give her information. He hides it as that. So that is clever. That is a clever thing to do. Man, And she's like, it was on December 20th in front of Asagao Hill, 11:02, headed to Spaceland. And what does he write down? And the way he writes, I give Light props. I can't really talk about something and write at the same time. So that takes some skill. And Ryuk's just watching him. And he says, Shoko Maki, suicide January 7th. And he says, commit suicide in a way that nobody will be inconvenienced and her body will not be discovered. Dies by implementing this plan within 48 hours. Within 48 hours. So it's a suicide within 48 hours where no one discovers the body. Okay. The only thing I can think of with that is that she did say she worked with Elle on a prior case. And if Elle knows that she was dating Ray, the only thing I can think of is that Elle may try to contact her and be like, hey, you worked with Ray Pinber. He was one of the FBI that died. He was following this guy Light, who happens to be the son of the police chief. Can you give me any information about did Ray tell you anything? And when he tries to call and she doesn't answer, then Elle might be suspicious and be like, why isn't she answering? And maybe would look into it, right? Because Light says right afterwards, he says within that time, he says, no, now no one will find her body. And even if they do find her, they'll assume she killed herself because of her fiance. So he's even admitting that they could find the body theoretically, but they'll think it's a suicide. But if Elle's worked with her and she says that Elle's like Light, this is the thing. It's not that their personalities are the same. It's not that their ideals are the same, but both of them are, Elle and Light are intelligent people who look at the entire big picture and meticulously break it apart, trying to find any possible thread to piece it together in a way that will benefit them. That's how they're similar. And that's probably how she thought they had that same air about them. And that's why she made the comparison. So yeah, Light, I don't think, in that moment, we'll go back to it because I'm rewatching the episode. In that moment, I think Light was kind of like, I'm like Elle? No, he's not as good as me. Like, there was that egotistical air there, but I don't know if Light is going to give Elle enough credit that this could happen. But yeah, if Elle starts to go back through the FBI agents being like, okay, who are they investigating? Who were they charged with looking at during this case? And if he sees that Ray Pinber, who died on the bus, in Miyagi, where in Kanto, not Miyagi, but in Kanto where Light is, if he notices that he was following Light, who is Chief Yagami's son, he's like, okay, there's a connection there, and he tries to get information from Naomi and realizes she's dead, then that's going to make him suspicious of Light. So it could still tie back around, but this just was a huge blow. And what gets me, the disturbing part of it, connected to the end of the episode, is that within 48 hours, why 48 hours? Why not 24? Like, that's 2 days. Like, within 2 days, she was going to kill herself. And she clearly, it affected everything about her. Like, her free will was completely affected. So the Death Note affects free will. That is absolutely terrifying. That's worse than many crimes I can think of. Right? That's the thing. That is the thing. That is worse. Is that equatable to, I mean, Light's at this point killed. He's murdered many people. And so equating it to murder. But the idea of using this Death Note and taking away free will, taking away what someone can do, that is one of the most chilling and terrifying things, that you are not in control of your own actions or your own body. He could make people kill other people before killing themselves. He could do lots of things. He didn't make the hijacker on the bus kill anybody, because the whole point was that he wanted to get Ray to show. That's the thing. If he had made the hijacker kill someone, then Ray may have acted up instantly and taken charge of the situation and not shown Light his name. He wouldn't have had that window of opportunity if the hijacker had killed somebody on the bus. But he could have made him do it. There's no telling if he finds out the names of any of these other people, using them to kill other people. Like, when this woman did nothing. She did no crimes. She committed no crimes other than she figured out the truth. She knew too much, and so she had to go. That's her only crime was knowing too much. And that's why Light got rid of her. But she didn't commit any other crimes. So if he'll do this to innocent people, and that's the thing, Elle and them don't know that he's killed innocent people yet. They don't have a clue. They think it's just been the criminals. But if they find out or suspect, then it's, oh my gosh. I just feel like there's several moments in this episode where there is a chance, if the mangaka, because right now Light seems pretty invincible, right? Light seems pretty invincible, but there's several parts of this episode I'm like, okay, he's not. Elle is trying to counter him, and that's what makes this series so fascinating, is that Light at this point does seem to be like he's still winning, and he's still winning the game and being in control of everything, but there's little tiny factors that I think are going to add up over here that are still going to spell trouble for Light. But we'll get to them. But oh my God, that's just so bone chilling. Just ugh. And he's like, what's so funny, Ryuk? I'm like, Ryuk, quit laughing. You're giving yourself away. Right? Even though we were laughing the whole time, being like, you know. So going back to the hotel, this embassy, Elle being Batman explains so much. Because they're in like this fancy hotel. Well, of course they can afford it. He's like Bruce Wayne, this eccentric billionaire's son or whatever. Him having like, it explains why I'm like, okay, when he was listening into the FBI and stuff, was it from his home in the Batcave? Like, was that it? Okay. So he questions them all individually. And he's like, Kira is not one of us. And I love that everybody visibly goes, oh. So he has brought out, I would say he's brought out other cups, but no, it's just the sugar and creamer. He still hasn't offered tea to any of them. I'm like, are you an only child, Elle? Are you like an only child that Watari has raised? And he's like, I like that they're like, how can you tell he's not among you? He's like, I set some traps to check if you were Kira, but I didn't have to end up using any of them. He's like, I didn't feel the need to set any of them on you. So he had traps in place. So Elle, okay, he has traps to detect Kira. And we don't know what those are yet. He's just telling us he's got them in place if he needs them, but he's not chose to use any of them yet. So, And they're like, huh. And then his cell phone, his blue cell phone. For the record, everything with Light right now is red. The red apples, blood, death. It's all in red, Ryuk. And then Elle, or Ryuzaki, is in blue. Because it's a contrast. And I want to Side note, how he takes his phone and he pulls the phone out. It's a flip phone, and he goes, goo, goo. He like flips it over that way. What? Like the way he opens it is just like with one hand, like it's like he's dissecting the phone. He just opens it barely, like a mouse would open a phone. And then the way he holds it is like he holds the phone like Levi Ackerman holds a teacup. I need these two to meet. I don't think that's so hard to ask. Isayama, mangaka of Death Note, get together. Give me a one shot. I'm not asking for much. And I like that Matsuda in that moment is like, he told us to turn off our cell phones, but he has his on. The audacity. But he did tell them last episode that he wanted the phones off because he didn't want them going off while he was talking. You know, it's funny. It's kind of like if a teacher tells you to give up your cell phone in class, but the teacher has the cell phone. It's like, you know. And I love that he's like, okay, got it. And then he's like, I'm just about finished. Enter with your key. And they're like, who's coming? And he's like, and I love that when he turns off the phone, he's like, he turns it off that way. Like getting as few fingerprints on the phone as possible. Watari is on his way, and everybody's like, they're more surprised to see Watari than they are Elle. They're like, we actually get to see what Watari looks like? What? And then we cut back to Light being like, if it's all right, I'll report this incident. And she's like, no, I'd like to report it myself. And Light's like, what? After talking to you, I've decided to do it as soon as possible. So Light he kind of backs himself into a corner. He's like, well, damn it. Nope. She's like, I gotta go. I suppose you're right. And then he keeps following her. And then he's like, just 10 seconds until 1:15. I want to see how this woman dies, but it can't be caught following her. So, yeah, okay. But I can't be caught following her. So, yeah, and then it cuts to it being, go on and hurry to your death. This is the twisted part. Light... This is it's a little sickly that Light, he wants to see her die. He wants to see her die. That's kind of the twisted part. It's like, you know, the Death Note, but it's like, but then testing the theory, right? And so I want to see what it is at the end, and then time goes on because he didn't have the right name. Oh. So that establishes something too. And that establishes that you can cross out a name and replace it with another. Okay? So that's chilling. You can have a pre-death established. And the part where she looks back and she's like, you're still following? At that point, girl, I would have gotten out of there. I've been like, okay, it's kind of weird that you're still following me after I said I'm going to go report it. Goodbye. And I'd be like, okay, time to go, high school kid. Get out of here. And so that would have been my cue to like get it out of the way. My tests have proved that I can make people kill themselves by writing suicide. The criminals I tested all hanged themselves at different times I specified. So he's experimented with criminals, making them hang themselves. Awesome. I proved many times that I should be able to control her within these circumstances. That's the thing too, is that he has tested suicide many times. I'm like, you know, just using these people and their deaths just to test theories. It's, you know, is it justice? Is it? And Ryuk just following behind. There are times where Ryuk's not in the frame, and when you almost forget that Ryuk is there, especially as Light becomes more and more panicked and desperate and is working through things, there's times where you kind of forget that Ryuk has been there, and then he pops back up and you're like, oh yeah, he's still here. He's just quietly observing like we are. And he's like, Ryuk, come to think of it, he was laughing oddly when I was writing the death. Yeah, Ryuk gave it away! I mean, I'm sure Light would have figured it out eventually, but Ryuk, and I almost feel like Ryuk was laughing just to be like, did you get it? Did you get it? Like, almost as Light is condescending towards Ryuk and being like, you'll learn a thing or two from me. I feel like Ryuk is a little condescending towards Light and being like, did you figure it out, human? Like, I feel like they're both kind of a little, they both jab at each other a little bit and kind of like rib and yes man this, you know, yes and each other. And so he figures out it's an alias. Which shouldn't be surprising because Light's using one. And then as soon as he says an alias, we cut to Watari. Now the question is this actually Watari? That is, I mean, I'm going to assume it is. I'm going to assume this is Watari. But is it really Watari? And also what I mean by that is Watari his real name? I don't think it is. I think at this point, because Watari calls L Ryuzaki like it's nothing. Like it's absolute, like it's the most common thing in the world. And maybe Ryuzaki is actually L's name, and that's the funny thing is the alias is the real name. But he calls himself Ryuzaki as if it's the most commonplace thing, as if they've practiced it for years, right? Leading up to this moment. And maybe it's like L's, you know, like a YouTuber, and Ryuzaki's his, you know, his handle. You know, he's like, he's been gaming. He's like, I'm Ryuzaki Watari. But I feel like maybe Watari is an alias as well. But as cautious as L is, I feel like Watari is an alias. That's not that man's actual name. Ryuzaki is an alias. It's not L's actual name. I feel like it's all part of the gimmick, right? Just to make sure and keep them safe. And he's like, thank you for working so hard. And they're like, this old man is Watari? What? But it makes sense. I love this. I love the idea that they're like, why aren't you dressed in your crazy trench coat and hat like you've normally been? And he's like, if I dressed like I usually do, it would be a dead giveaway. I would be telling everyone that I'm Watari. And it would also give away Ryuzaki's location in this hotel. And they're like, oh, yeah, you guys have really planned this out and been cautious about this. They're as overly cautious as Naomi was, except she got tricked. Except we'll talk about that. Her emotions got the better of her. Her emotional involvement, we'll talk about that at the end of this. It was all set up from episode 4. We'll go back and talk about it, or episode 5. But yeah, and I feel like when he says, I'd be giving myself away as Watari, it's a sign, like a hint that I'm not really Watari. That's a name of that alias when I'm with the FBI. This is who I actually am, and it's a different name, but you all don't know that. Showing my face in front of you means you've all won Ryuzaki's trust. That's a big move too, meaning that they were all questioning their trust. And now Watari is like, no. And here's the thing. I feel like they trust Watari because he's always been around them. He's always been a physical presence. So even though they haven't seen his face, they're like, oh, well, you've been with us all this time, Watari. We've been through thick and thin together, Watari. But now they're meeting L for the first time. But it's establishing Watari saying that you've earned Ryuzaki or L's trust. That's been a big thing in this. That's been the push. We talked about how Light's like, I just need one more push to manipulate these people. He's like, I need one more push to manipulate Naomi into giving me her real name. In this, it's the opposite. L's like, I need one more push to get these people to trust me so that I can help them help me catch Kira. So they're similar. L and Light, they're both very much manipulating other people around them to accomplish their goals, which they believe in their hearts is a form of justice. And it's like, haha, I love it. So yeah, Watari's like, you've earned L's trust, and that's all they needed to know. That established trust. And yeah, because Matsuda's like, I feel kind of honored. It's like you guys were questioning him last episode of if you could even trust him, and now you're like, you're honored to have gained his trust. It's so good. God, this episode's amazing. And he's like, I brought what you've requested from the Batcave, Master L. Just Master Wayne. And I love that this whole time L is just like a cat. Like, okay, sure, cool. Like, I feel like he's just this recluse that's been stuck in the Batcave for years. And now he's coming out. Oh my gosh. And he's like, please pass him out. And he looks so young there. He's like, please pass him out to everybody. If this guy's like 20, I won't be surprised. If he's like 22, won't be surprised. The way his voice is deeper, so I don't think he's like 16 or 17. I think he's like maybe 20 or 22, but it won't be surprised if he's young. And he's like, pass them out. The fake IDs. The fake badges. And at first, I was like, well, how is that gonna work? Light knows who they are, but they don't know Light knows who they are as Kira. So that's another thing too. And my dog is literally at my feet. Hey, buddy. So that's the other thing too. So we're gonna talk about the badges, okay? We're gonna talk about the badges. I'm gonna kind of like get over this. All right. I'm talking about how this ties back to the badges and the trust situation. So, in this scenario, Light knows the police, right? Light knows the police. Okay. But the police have these fake IDs. So, going through this, if Light finds out who is on the actual task force. Right now, Light does not know who is on the task force. He does not know. Light has no clue. All he knows is that his dad is on it. That's all that Light knows. And Light said he wasn't going to kill his dad. He's like, if you die, then I'll make sure to execute Kira myself. So he doesn't want to kill his father. Good to know. So, but if somebody else, like, let's say Aizawa, I feel like Aizawa is going to be a target because he was the one with the umbrella in this incident. I feel like, what if we find out later on that Aizawa did notice Light talking to that woman, and he sees a picture of her and he's like, oh, I saw Light talking to that woman, but I didn't think anything of it. Or I saw her on the street. And what if they find out that woman, the whole thing up here, where Elle starts to suspect her and puts her face out, and Aizawa's like, oh, I remember seeing a woman that looked like that one day. And then they check like camera footage and find Light. My point is, if at some point, I feel like Aizawa's got a target on him now because he's the next one, and he walked by Light, and if Light realizes that Aizawa was there and saw him and is like, I got to get rid of him so I can cut off all the connections, right? That's the thing too, is that Light may find out that he was there, right? That he was there at the crime scene and saw him with her. And if he's suspicious and he's overly cautious, he might be like, I got to get rid of Aizawa. He's got to go. So let's say, for example, he gets rid of Aizawa, who is using the fake ID. Then Elle is going to suspect, okay, why was he targeted? Someone that killed Aizawa that knew he was on the task force with us, knew his real name. And that is going to be Elle's way of saying, hey, we've all been operating with fake IDs this whole time. The general public doesn't know who we are. We've not been showing the people in the office. We've not shown the people at work that we're using fake IDs. So by that logic, it's not somebody from the outside world. It's somebody with connections on the inside that know who we really are. And they're Kira. So that's going to limit it, right? So that's going to limit things. And so if that happens, then Elle's going to start to try to connect the dots and say who would know the police force that is close to a high school student age. Or even if it's not a high school student that is just close and would have access to that information. And that's when Light's going to be brought up, and they're going to be able to tie it to Ray Pimber investigating him, and it's going to blow the case wide open, right? So, there's just, that could happen. That's a possibility. I'm not saying that it's going to happen, but it's a possibility. It's there. And I don't know if Light has no clue that this situation with the fake IDs and stuff is happening. Right? He has no idea. So, oh my God. It's just, this episode's opening up so many possibilities. And yeah, this whole time, this woman's walking, like, and Light is like, Ryuk can see her real name. That's why he was laughing. Yes, that's exactly why. This woman was being cautious from the start. Yeah, him realizing she's not going to be easy to kill. She knows that Ray died because he showed his ID. And that's why she's acting without revealing it. Yep. That's exactly right. This isn't good. And it's even harder. Yeah, because he's like, I can't ask for her real name because then I'll be outing myself that I know it's an alias, and she'll get suspicious and be like, well, why are you suspecting that? And then she'll suspect him even more. So yeah, I love that Light goes through every possible scenario. And again, this girl's like, I should be getting back soon. Someone might have come back. Girl, I would have left and not told him and just went back another day. But nope. But in the moment, she's so dead set on trying to get answers that she just keeps going. And Light's trying to figure out what to do. And that's when the animation of them walking, and Light's like, okay. And the thing of it is, for a second, he debates using force and like killing her, like with his bare hands. Like he debates not killing her with his bare hands, but he debates like mugging her and getting her ID. And he makes the excuse. He's like, oh, she's a woman. I'm like, hun, she's FBI. I think she'd been trained and could kick your ass. You're not part of the judo club, right? You're a model student. You've not been working out in your bedroom this entire time. I was like, Light, him thinking like, I can overpower her. She's a woman. I'm like, awesome. You're winning all of the favors here. But I'm like, she's FBI. She probably could kick your ass. But she doesn't do that. But yeah, him debating on mugging her and taking her ID and doing all of this. And that's when Ryuk brings up the eyes and the deal. Where he's like, hey, you could. He's like, I've got to change my plan of attack. I can do this. And I will give Light this. I will give Light this. Light does not want the deal. I debated on whether she would make him take the deal because he does not want the deal and he wants to do it on his own. I mean, the main reason is he doesn't, I think he told Ryuk way back in episode 3, he's like, if you were going to extend my life, then yeah, I'd take the eyes because that's a win-win for me. But he's like, I'm not going to do something that's going to disadvantage me. So there is a curious kind of difference between L and Light here, maybe. And that is that L is risking his life by being involved with others. So L is taking a gamble and risking his life to be involved with others, whereas Light is doing the opposite. He is not involving himself with any outside help because he knows that it will hurt him. So both of them realize the risk of accepting outside help, but L does it because he believes it's going to benefit him the most. And Light does not because he believes it's going to benefit him the most. He's like, no, I can do this. I can get her name without setting alarms off. I do appreciate that Light is so self-confident and believes he can do it. I appreciate that about Light. I appreciate that he has that go get him attitude and thinks he can do it. I'm like, cool. Good for you. Good for you, Light. I'm glad that you're confident like that. And that's when Ryuk's like, we can do that eye deal at any time. Yeah, it's no different than putting on contact lenses. It just takes a few seconds. So that's curious. So I am wondering this whole eye deal, if he did take the Shinigami eyes. If the Shinigami eyes, it seems like the way he describes it is a power you can turn on or off for humans, perhaps. Maybe. Or if that's just Ryuk saying that to get him to take the deal, to try to tempt him, right? It's funny because Ryuk tries to tempt Light, but Light's like, no, I won't have my remaining life halved by the likes of her. Like, he's like, she's not good enough for me to have my life. Now, would L be a cause for him to take the Shinigami eyes? That's a good thing, too. If he ever stumbled across L and didn't know his name, and if he saw L, would that tempt him to take the deal? I don't know. It depends on if they ever see one another and realize who one another is, right? I won't ever consider the deal. I'm so curious. I'm really wondering if L will take the Shinigami eyes eventually. He says he won't ever consider it, and he manages to kill her in this episode, so it's looking like he won't need it, but there's a big part of me that feels like at some point he's going to take it. He's going to take the offer. He's going to get into a corner. But so far that's not happened. So maybe not. Maybe he won't ever take the deal. And I love he's like, shut up, Shinigami. Don't bother me. And again, third time where the woman's like, excuse me. She's like, do you have business? Do you still have business? Girl, just like Ray, I'm like, the writing was on the wall that he was acting suspicious and she still didn't. She's like, I'll be all right by myself. And that's when Light's like, I understand. And that's when he thinks up the idea. So, okay, here's the thing. They give the fake police IDs. And he's like, Cure requires a name and a face to kill. So they don't realize that Light who knows all of them, is a suspect. So he's like, if anybody in the public sees your fake name, then we'll be able to out them better. We have better chances of outing, and we're challenging him, right? And I like that they debate it, but they're like, no, Chief Yagami is correct. He's like, this is the best chance at protecting ourselves. Like, they're basically becoming L's. They're getting aliases and protecting themselves from Kira. It's like, yeah, no, it totally makes sense. I'm like, I would be totally on board if I was like, no, this is a great idea. We should carry these around. And Matsuda's like, yeah, I think so too. I think protecting our lives is important. And it's like, when you have to give your name out to strangers, use these, obviously. And don't tell anybody at the office, right? And be careful not to use them inside of the headquarters. Yeah, because that's the thing. We're going to try to out Kira and make sure that nobody in the police department is them, right? So they don't need to know that we're using fake IDs. It could cause problems. Yeah, it could basically ruin the whole plan. They're like, yep. And then the belts. So I think I like the idea that the belts are like a communication device. There has to be something. It says it's a tracking device in the buckle. This way he'll know your whereabouts. Yeah, so I was like, there has to be a tracking device to know where they are, right? So that's convenient for L because the tracking device, right? The tracking device is going to give him info, right? Is going to give him info about where each of those men live. So if something goes down, he can go track the location and the area that they are at and have more access to that information. Yeah. And then if you press the belt buckle, it calls Watari immediately. And you'll go to work at the police department, and using this method later, you'll confirm our hotel and room number. Okay. And I like the whole time that Elle's just sipping it. Please use this for emergencies as well. Okay. Because, yeah, it's an emergency, so if they need to use it. I like it. It's like, this is kind of cool. Got some secret spyware. It's like, helping out old Batman here. And I love that Chief Yagami's like, can you please treat this seriously? We are trying to catch a mass serial killer. This is not child's play. Don't joke around. And he's like, okay. Meanwhile. But yeah, so that's interesting. So basically, it connects straight to Watari. That's going to be fascinating to see how that goes. But okay, I also like how all of the people there in the room instantly like respect and are like endearing to Watari. They're like, oh, old Watari, like they've known him for years. And Elle's just like, okay, sure thing, it'll work. Again, Elle and Light not afraid to use people and to get information. It's fascinating. And she's like, okay, thanks, bye. I've got confidence to go in my theory. See ya. And then I love that Light's like, the gears are turning. He's like, how do I do this? How do I convince her? What do I do? How do I get her to like give me her name? Like, he's trying to think of every possible scenario. And then we cut to our intermission card here. A god of death has no obligation to completely explain how to use the note or rules which will apply to the human who owns it. So yeah, that basically Ryuki's like, I don't have to tell you anything unless I want to. I'm under no obligation. I'm like, that rule we've seen before. But this other rule I think is new. And that is that a god of death can extend his life by putting human names on the note, but humans cannot. Yep. So that's curious. When Ryuk says he's going to eventually kill Light when the death note's done, like, what you going to write in there, Ryuk? Are you just going to write Light's name and let him die of a heart attack? Or are you going to write something else? How's this going to work? Okay. How do we know that Ryuk's not already wrote Light's name in the death note and just wrote however many years later? Who knows, right? Okay, and so he comes to this conclusion that if someone from the task force has returned, I'm finished. I've got to find out her real name and eliminate her. So, and there's 3 minutes till they reach police headquarters. So I thought he was going to jump her. Like, he gets in a stance like he's going to run at her, and Ryuk's like, what are you doing? I thought he was going to, like, mug her or do something. And he's like, no. He tries to do several different things. He first tries to tell her that nobody at the headquarters is going to be able to contact her. He tries so many things. He's like, nobody's going to be able to contact you at headquarters, so you might as well not even try. And he tries to, like, agree with the same things as her, all of that. And he does a good job lying. He says, in other words, you'll never be able to talk directly to someone from headquarters. But that's such a... In other words, you'll never be allowed to talk. I was like, I'm sure she was kind of like, I'll be able to talk to somebody, even if it's L, right? Because the way she looks at him, that glare she gives him, she's kind of like, nobody? Never? Are you sure? Do you know how the FBI works? I can talk to somebody. Like, I feel like she doubts him, right? And he's like, oh, that's good, Light. Yeah, Ryuk's like, oh, keep going. And she's like, why do you know so much? I've been like, red flag. Like, just, ah! And then he's like, she's pretty sharp. She's figuring you out. Mm-hmm. But then he's like, I guess I have no choice. I have to tell you, I'm part of the task force. So he lies. And Ryuk's like, and she's like, you're part of the task force. He's like, yeah. And so he goes back to the thing about L, saying L is currently in charge of the task force. But my thing was that back at the headquarters, he said this will be our chance to stop L. And here, I'm like, if you're stopping L, I'm like, girl, I would have questioned him, but hindsight's 2020, right? Hindsight's 2020. It's like L was trouble because there weren't enough detectives at headquarters. Many quit because they're afraid of Kira. Like, he's just so sincere as he says it. He's like, I'm just a high school student, but I've helped the police solve 2 cases in the past. So yeah, that's the thing. Light has helped solve cases. Our old man Jenkins, Scooby-Dooing it, helping them solve cases. So he's helped the police force before. It's just, God. Just the web that is woven in this episode, it is amazing. And she's like, and she says, so he was convinced by that? That again, she's suspicious of him because she's like, Light trusts you just because you helped solve 2 cases in the police department? It just seems like she's so doubtful of him. But he wins her over by the temptation of her emotions, right? Just her blinking like she's questioning everything he's saying. And as he's got his eyes closed as he's saying it because he's lying. He's got his eyes closed so she can't tell what he's like. She can't peer into his eyes and question him. But then he opens them and says, he says, only those that are on the task force are trusted and highly qualified. And her eyes start shimmering. And Ryuk starts laughing because he sees that she's taking the bait. And she's like, oh, I understand. But just in case, I'll visit the headquarters. So yeah, and he's like, what? And she's like, thank you very much. Like, that's really kind. Glad you're working. He's like, well, no. I love that he's so desperate. He's like, I just told you that you can't talk to anyone. And she's like, I'll talk directly to L. And they're almost to the headquarters. Yep. And then we cut to L. And that's God. And at the same time, L is like, come to think of it, who's at the headquarters now? And they say nobody. And he's like, that's not good. That's too suspicious. If Kira shows up at the headquarters and sees no one's there, he's going to suspect that we're meeting. He's like, someone needs to be there at all times. That's not good. It's like they both realize that stuff's going down at the same time. And he tells Aizawa to go stay there. He's like, I can get there quickly from here. So they're not far from the headquarters. Oh my God. They're not far from the headquarters. Oh. And then, God, the way he says, Miss Maki, please wait. And it's so emotionless. He says, it's impossible to meet L. It's useless. And she says, no. And then she outs herself as FBI. He might allow me to meet him. I've only followed his orders from beyond a computer screen, but 2 years ago in America, I worked in a case under L. God. And he's like, what? You worked under her? And she reveals that she's FBI. The moment she revealed she was FBI, I was like, well, you're dead. It's over. Because he's like, oh, he's like, this is it. I can use this. And then he has this evil look and he's like, oh, is that so? Ah! And then this is the part. This is the part that, Light, he plays and tempts her with her ability as an FBI agent. Because Light is proud, and he knows how pride works. And he knows that that's the way to like tell her how competent she is and lure her in that way. And you move carefully and wisely and you get to the heart of the matter. I'd like to learn from you. And he's just got that smug look. And Ryuk's like, it's amazing how you can line up all those lies like that. Yeah, Ryuk's like, you're such a good liar. Yeah. So Ryuk, you're a good liar. Which makes me wonder how much of a liar Elle is, because if Elle's a liar, because Naomi says that he's a lot like Elle, right? Or that he knows how to play people, right? And she's like, I have to approach this case in my own way. I have to suspect the police and even the people within the task force. Like, she's on it. She's just, yeah, she had it all figured out. She was just ready to go. Had it all set. But I trust Elle. That's the thing. And that gets Light's attention, is that Naomi says that she trusts Elle. She doesn't trust anybody else but him. And I'm like, aha, okay. And that gets Light's attention, like, really? She's like, I thought if I went to headquarters and had them verify my name and face, I'd be able to speak directly to Elle. So it's almost like the opposite. It's kind of like, here's the thing. In the case of Elle, verifying your face and name with Elle is salvation. And verifying it with Light is your destruction. But for Light, doing the exact same thing is your death. I love that. I love that parallel. That's really good. That contrast is great. So yeah. And he's like, oh, I see. He's like, why did you tell me that you wanted to talk to Elle? And she says, because you remind me of him. I love it. It's great. And then she's like, but that's not it. It's like, to tell you the truth, you seemed like Elle. And like the look on his face, she's like, I felt you two are similar. And look on his face, he's like, really? Really? Okay. Interesting. And so he sees her face and how downtrodden she looks. And he's like, shall we investigate the case together? And he's like, will you work as a member in the task force? Because that's the thing. And then we see Aizawa coming out. Of course, not just anybody is allowed, right? But we need people like you. I feel like that's such a meme. Him reaching out, being like, we need people like you in the task force. Like, just that temptation. It's like he's offering her the apple. Like, just offering her. Because here's the thing. Ray, from Beyond the Grave, Ray's whole thing in episode 5 was telling her that they agreed that she wouldn't be FBI anymore and that she could just sit at home and be a mom and raise the family and that her talents weren't needed anymore. And Light he tempts her with the opportunity to help them avenge her husband's death, to use her talents that she was being denied. Like, he's like, we need people like you. You could be doing more than gathering general information. You were an FBI agent. And just the sparkle in her eyes, you were more talented than our current detectives. Like, he just plays her like a damn fiddle. Even Elle trusted you. To join the task force, you need proper identification and a recommendation from a current detective on the team. And finally, Elle's permission. And she's like, you want me to join to find him? It's fate that we met here. I'll recommend you. But here's the thing. This is where I was expecting this to go this way, right? Because if she had joined that task force, right? If she had joined that task force, I was expecting Light to use Naomi to locate Elle. That's why I thought it was going. I was like, okay, if she joined up with Light And Light's like, look, we can't make contact right now with the other police of headquarters. I need to go to them first. But I need you to help me get in contact with Elle. That's what I thought he was going to do. I thought he was going to be like, oh, hey, if you don't have to give me your alias yet, you can just, let's go find and meet Elle together. Because Elle is so cautious at this point, and he's put in place the same, so now Light has to deal with like 6 other people that have the same thing going on that she had. He's got to figure out the identities of all these other characters like he did with her. And he can't use the task force thing on them because they're already part of the task force. That's not going to work. But I really thought he was going to try to use her for at least a little bit to find Elle. I thought he was going to maybe like use her or put some amendment to the death note, but it's been over 6 minutes, so he can't amend it. I thought, or he could have even wrote her name again. He could have amended it. Or has it been 6 minutes? Has it been 6 minutes since then? But I just feel like I thought he was going to use her to help find Elle, and now that avenue's gone. Like, he can't do that anymore. And yeah, Aizawa, just by fate, walking by, is like, oh, I'm sorry. I got a little overexcited. And she says, no. Even if you can cooperate with this investigation, I understand you have personal circumstances to attend to, especially since you live in America. And she establishes that she wanted to move back here after they were married. But now that he's dead. Yeah, he just preys upon her. She says, I have no idea what I'll do now. And he's like, and he just manipulated her. He completely used her emotions. He used her emotions from the death of her fiance and her pride as an FBI agent, everything. And he completely manipulated her to her own death. And he's like, but you're still very young and beautiful. You shouldn't be involved in a dangerous investigation. And that's like the whole thing with Ray, right? And Ray's like, oh, you shouldn't be involved. I love you. And she's like, now I don't have anything to lose. And she gives the ID to him. I want to catch Kira. It's all I want to do. Let me investigate with you. And the moment she says that, she sealed her fate. And Ryuk laughing, like the screen shaking, it all becoming red, Ryuk's outline, he knew she was dead. Like, I'm sure that the moment she said, let me investigate with you, her lifeline completely changed. And he saw it and was like, you've just sealed your fate. God. Oh. He's like, oh, thank goodness. And she still showed it to him. She still showed it. God. And yeah, and then as it starts to snow, he pulls up the umbrella. And as he pulls up the umbrella, he doesn't see Light's face. And he doesn't see her face either. Oh, no! Naomi Misora. Wait, I want to see if anything changed. Naomi Misora commits suicide in a way that nobody will be inconvenienced and her body will not be discovered. Dies by implementing this plan within 48 hours. Oh. God. Yep. And then he didn't see them. Oh. Damn it. And he checks. And right now it's 1:25. Yeah, it's 1:25 right now. So it's been 10 minutes since then. And she's counting down the seconds. And she's like, why do you keep looking at your watch? And from here, he told her who he was. I didn't think he'd do it. I didn't think that he would. I'm Kira. That animation of her eyes and expression, God, that's chilling. That is the most chilling thing ever in this series. It's the way that her face changes when he says that he's Kira. It's like looking at the face of God. Looking at the Grim Reaper. God. Oh. He actually had the balls to tell her. But here's the scary thing. Is that the time passes and he lowers his watch. And then she's just done. And it's like she's completely taken over and consumed by the thought of committing this suicide. Oh, and she just turns and walks away. and he tests it. He tests to see if she cares anymore about the case. And he's like, what's the matter? And she's like, there's something I have to do. Oh. So he basically, so the death note, once you write down the means, like the person becomes focused only on carrying out its will. Because she's like, there's something I have to do. And he's like, oh, my dad's on the line, don't you? Like, he just teases her. My father's cell phone's on now. Don't you want to talk to him? She's like, I have nothing I want to talk about. Goodbye, Miss Naomi Masora. I'm like, you just sentenced a woman to kill herself. And you teased her, and just, that's the scary thing. Now he knows that once he writes it in the death note, they're not going to try to do anything else between that and the death. They're not going to try to do anything else. They're just going to go immediately to get the death done with. Oh, that's just chilling. Ugh. I felt my heart drop to my stomach. Oh. And he's so proud that he figured it all out. And then that imagery of her walking towards the noose. Oh my God, in the snow. I don't know if I can wait a week. I don't know if I can wait a week to find out what happens next. So he's not out of the woods yet. There's still a chance. There's still things that can go back and that Elle can use to his advantage. And this whole thing with the belt, with the fake IDs, like he's basically setting up, Elle is as cautious as Naomi, but even more so. I feel like Elle would not have been thrown off by that. But Naomi she let her emotions get taken advantage of, and Light took complete advantage of them. Oh my God. What an episode. What an episode, y'all. This series is amazing. I'm like floored. Whiteboard Kun and I are floored by it, and it was wonderful. But now, I'm so curious to see what old Batman and Alfred are gonna. I'm like, if Watari dies in this, I'll riot. Watari seems like a cinnamon bun. No, and Elle, that's gonna be so interesting. So I'm so curious now. I'm really curious to know your thoughts down below. But holy crap! Oh. So I'm gonna erase Whiteboard Kun. I may go and watch the dub now, but no, I like watching the dub right before watching the new episode because it like refreshes me. But that was, that episode got me. It's the best episode so far and the most haunting, and just setting up like, I don't know how at this point you can view Light in a favorable means. I don't. I know some people like Light, and I'm like, after what he did to her and how he killed her and how he toyed with her, even if it was to find out a point, I'm like, ooh, I just can't be. I'm not on board with Light right now. Not really. And I'm sure that Elle is going to reveal some things about him, with him and Light being similar. I'm sure there's going to be things that are going to make me question my views of Elle as well as Light. But Light is not on my good list right now. No. I'm kind of like Ryuk. I feel like we're supposed to be like Ryuk. We're supposed to not like either. We're supposed to not pick sides yet. We're not supposed to pick sides with Elle or Light. We're supposed to be the objective fly on the wall throughout all this and watching how it goes down. But twice now in the last 3 episodes, Light has been close to being figured out, and he just gets lucky and scrapes by manipulating people. By manipulating their emotions. That's the thing. He totally plays with Ray and Naomi's emotions towards each other and used that to his advantage. But Elle, I don't feel like Elle has that relationship with anybody except maybe Watari, so I feel like that wouldn't work on Elle, but we'll see. So I'm curious to know your thoughts down below, but holy cow, this episode. So I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back next week with episode 8 of Death Note. Bye.